So I got it in my head that I should build a marimba. I can't really remember where I got that idea, but anyway, I found a website called makeamarimba.com where this guy called Jim is given pretty good instructions to build a marimba from scratch, just using tools and materials that you can get at your local hardware shop. So without really thinking through the amount of time this was going to take, I just jumped right in and started building the marimba, starting with the bars. So I'm up to the B3 bar. That's the 12th bar, starting from the lowest one. I've marked the arch, and that's based on the A sharp 3 bar. So I've marked that on both sides, and I'm just going to start off by roughing out the shape with this belt, the roughest belt that I've got. So now I'm going to swap to a finer belt, not the finest one, but one that's a bit finer. I think this might be 120 or something like that. So I'm just trying to keep the arch symmetrical right now. I haven't started tuning it yet. So now you can see it's getting smoother. Now that's because I've been tuning it, and now I'm tuning 3 notes. The fundamental, which is the note that gets lower if you sand right in the middle here. The second harmonic, which is the one that gets lower if you sand along these bits. And the third harmonic, which is the one that gets lower when you sand right out here. Now, I don't know if they're the right names for the harmonics, but basically fundamental is the note that you're playing when you hit the bar. This harmonic here is 2 octaves above the fundamental, or it should be 2 octaves above the fundamental. That's what I'm tuning it to. And then this should be 3 octaves and a major third above the fundamental. And so I've got to bring the fundamental down until all 3 notes are basically in relation to each other, then bring all of them down together. Now I've written this graph in a way so that the blue is the fundamental, the red is that 4 times frequency, and the green is the 10 times frequency. So I've put the scale on the side so that when they're in relation to each other, they should all be together. And then this range here is the range getting close to the note that it's going to be. So it's going to be B3, but I can stop at C4 for now because I'm just rough tuning it. So when I get all 3 of those notes together and in this range, then that's rough tuned and ready for fine tuning later after I've drilled the hole in it for the string to go through. Because I'm fine tuning it, I'm using this sanding disc, which is a lot slower and a lot more delicate than this one. And what this does is because it's a soft pad, it makes the shape a lot smoother as I go through it. It smooths it down, and it gets rid of bumps and irregularities in the shape of that. But it is a lot slower as well at bringing those notes down. So I repeated the process 37 times for 37 notes or 3 octaves, starting at C3 going all the way up to C6. At this stage, the bars are rough tuned, which means they're sitting about a semitone sharp of their final frequency, but some of them are a bit sharper than that. So when I put them together, they don't really sound in tune with each other. The bottom octave is triple tuned. That means I tuned the fundamental note, the first harmonic, which is 4 times the frequency of the fundamental, and then the second harmonic, which is 10 times the frequency of the fundamental. The middle octave, I just double tuned it, which means I just tuned the fundamental and the first harmonic. And then with the top octave of bars, I just single tuned it. So I just tuned the fundamental. The reason for this is that on the lower notes, the harmonics are within an audible range where you can hear them, but as you get up into the higher notes, the harmonics are now so high that you can't hear them so well, and also they're very short, so it'll only clack with the harmonic for a tiny amount of time, so there's not really much point in tuning them. The other thing is that because the bars are not that thick, with the shorter bars, you'll find that the harmonics are already too flat even when you just start tuning the bar. So because you can only lower the frequencies, if the harmonic is already too flat, then you can't get it in tune. Okay, so the frame is basically put together. I put the eyelets in on the lower rungs, and what I'm doing is I'm putting these little rubber O-rings that I made out of some rubber tubing. You see, I cut them out of a bit of rubber tubing. I'll put them on here. So I've just fitted all of the natural note bars in their slots, and you see I've put a bit of felt there. The only problem is some of the bars, you see that? It's touching the rubber on both sides. If it sits loosely, that's okay, but see, some of them it's grabbing. See it grabbing? That one's okay. Grabbing, okay. Very tight. Good, good, good. Tight, good, tight. See, these ones that are tight, I think what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to mark where they're tight, and I think I'll just sand a little bit off both sides of the bar in that spot. And because it's close to the nodal point, it should have minimal impact on the tuning, but at any rate, the fact that these bars are not fully fine-tuned yet means that I'll fine-tune them after I've drilled the hole and loosen them up in their little spots. So I've marked the lines where it lines up to the strut, and the ones that were sitting tight, see this one's sitting tight. See, I've marked little lines here saying I've got to sand the sides a little bit. Another thing is the ones that are sitting loose, they actually already make a sound. I guess because they're sitting on the felt, they can actually vibrate quite a bit, even without the string going through it. Most of the notes are sitting a semitone above where they're finally going to be, but some of them are exactly the note that they're going to be, and some of them are 2 semitones. So now I am drilling the holes in the bars. Now I've already drilled the holes that go perpendicular, that go on a 90-degree angle. I did them first because they're easier. Now I'm doing the ones that are on the angle. So I've got my drill press here, and what I'm doing is I'm marking a dot where I want to drill on this side, and then another dot here to show where I want the drill bit to come out. We put the hole towards the bottom of the bar so that the bar is sitting higher and it doesn't hit the bar on the other side of it as easily. So it doesn't hit downwards and wreck the sound. It's sitting on felt as well when it's on the marimba. So the felt helps it to continue to vibrate if it should hit below. All right. Now, I've got it sitting on a piece of timber so that it doesn't blow out when it comes out the other side. Just got to line it up. Beautiful. Got a little bit of blowout. Got a bit of blowout because the bit of timber underneath already had a hole drilled through it. So it could protect it against the blowout. So I've got to screw all of these eyelets in and get them basically at the same height as each other. So what I'm doing with that is I'm just screwing it until the thread is almost completely in, but there's just a little bit of thread out the top. That way, when they're all the same height as each other, the string should basically run in a straight line. There we go. Now I just got to do one more run of them, and then I'll put the rubber grommets on. The reason why I'm going on both sides and going towards the middle is because that way, if you come at it from 2 sides at once, you get to the end at double the speed. And it also means that you only have to go halfway, you see, because you're only going from one side into the middle instead of from one side all the way to the other side. So it's actually 4 times faster. So first I'm just screwing them in a little bit of the way by hand. This See, I'm just putting the eyelets in, and then when I get to the end, then I start tightening them up with both hands. See, here I go, tightening them up with both hands, coming back across. And then when I get to the end, then I get the pliers, tighten them up with the pliers. And then once I've tightened them right up with the pliers, then I will get my set square and straighten them all up. You see how I'm doing it in fast motion? Well, I wish that I had that in real life, because this is really boring. The felt is underneath the white keys, but there's no felt. There's no felt under the black keys. So there's a big difference, you know? It's like, you know, so that felt is going to help. And also, they all need to be tuned properly. We're getting close. So I've strung up the lower tier of bars. That's the white keys. So some of the bars, they want to sit a little bit higher. So I just push them down so that they sit kind of even. I mean, they've got the rubber grommets on them, so the rubber grommet pushes down when I press a little bit. So, and there is some improvement in the sustain. That's the best note. It's held at tension with this spring here, you know, just in case things move a little bit. Nothing should sag with that spring there. So I'm just about to string up the upper tier. So I forgot to mention, obviously before I strung this up, I fine-tuned all of these bars, and that took quite a while. In future, what I would do, since the positioning of the holes was predetermined anyway, I would just pre-drill the holes before I do any of the tuning. Then I would just tune it all in one go. So I really don't know how to play the marimba at all. What I'll start with is scales like... I realized when you alternate mallets, you end up going right up the top, then left up the top as you go up on the chromatic scale. Ta-da! So even though the instrument is already a playable instrument now, I'm still going to build the resonators. So you see this is a fair bit of polypipe that I had to buy. This is just one row of resonators here. This is the natural notes. So there's 25 resonators here. Had to cut them all to length. And then once they're all cut to length, then you put the cap on it and start tuning it by tapping on the cap next to a tuner. So if it's flat, then you've got to sand the bottom of the pipe so that it shortens it and raises the pitch. And once it gets too sharp, there's not much you can do to fix that. You can loosen the cap out a little bit. The problem with that though is that then if the cap is loose, then it's not going to sit in the right place. So what I ended up doing was I riveted all of the caps on and tuned them from there. The other thing that I didn't realize until I had built the resonator assembly is that once you've put them all together, you can't really tap on the caps of the tubes anymore to get the note, because the whole thing kind of bangs together. So you really have to have them tuned perfectly before you're going to start assembling them. Now, between the bars of the marimba and the resonators, a few things are a little out of tune, but when I put it together, it sounds basically okay. I can be a bit of a stickler for intonation sometimes, but I need to stop looking at the tuner and start just listening to it, because it actually sounds pretty good, I think. So some final thoughts about building this marimba. It's a good thing I had instructions. I think they cost me about $83 for the PDF with instructions for building this marimba, and it's definitely been worth spending that $83 or however much it was, because with all the materials that I bought and all the time that I put into it, the cost of the instructions is really insignificant, and yet it helped me an awful lot, saved me a lot of time and possible destroyed materials. The other thing is it took a lot longer than you may think it would, based on what it says in the instructions and also just based on what you would imagine. Some of these bars took me like 4 hours to tune, especially the low octave that I triple tuned. Some of the first bars that I did really took a long time, and that's sitting there with a mask on, sanding constantly. It's really not fun. And then getting towards the end on the last few notes, I just wanted it to be over. You know, the top notes didn't take anywhere near as long, but they still took a bit of time. You know, so all in all, the marimba took me about 2 months of hard work. Outside of work hours, you know, I'd come home and I'd start working on the marimba, get covered in sawdust every time, and then I'd have to, you know, it's not something that you can just go inside and outside, do a bit of work and then come back in, because you get filthy every time. So keep that in mind. If you have a few full days to devote to the project, that's probably a lot better than a couple of hours every day after work. Anyway, I'm glad it's finished, and I'm looking forward to learning to play the marimba.